Hi there, friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the writing doctor. Today's video is on how to write clear thesis and position statements for expository and persuasive, controlling idea statements if you're working with seventh grade, well, from fifth grade to seventh grade in Texas. We call them thesis statements from 8th and 9th, and position statements usually from 10 on, and central idea statements if you're fourth grade or lower. Now, outside of Texas, it doesn't matter. Now, behind me, I have a virtual library, and the reason I have it there is because your library is full of factual books called nonfiction about real people, real events, and real places that your kids can use as examples to explain ideas about topics. There's sometimes audio where they can not only read words, but they can listen to them as well. Sometimes there's movies inside public libraries where your kids could use movies to help them explain their ideas. And because of the limited experiences that too many kids come to the classroom with, especially based on the fact that for the last couple of years, they've been limited to their homes in a lot of cases for distant learning. And so very little time was spent going to school because they were doing their school at home. And several families, just to be on the safe side, didn't even go to stores and to restaurants. And so that's going to hurt the ability of many of your 9th and 10th graders to write about experiences that are personal. So they're going to have to be hypothetical, meaning that they could happen because they read them in a fiction book about a person or an animal if the book was about animal fantasy, and they could use those examples to explain certain things. And so when you're teaching the brainstorming how to come up with a good thesis or position statement, you have to help your kids remember that you have to have the organizational structure in the back of your mind thinking, okay, if I choose this idea about the topic, what reasons why can I give, and what examples from books or movies, newspapers, from songs, things that you see with your eyes or hear with your ears, because they're going to want to pick the one that gives them the easiest chance to get a 2 or a 3 if they're a struggling writer, or a 3 or a 4 if they're a student who has more experiences, has read more books, watched more movies, gone more places. And so as you read each of my sample thesis or position statements, I want you to know that before a thesis statement or position statement, the idea that's about the topic, that higher than that, you have hair, you have a hat possibly, or you, if you're a pirate, you sometimes have hooks. Now the hooks are in your hand, so I would hold that hook up there. So whatever you write first to get their attention, I'm going to call that the WOW, the wow. What other words could you use besides repeating the prompt words over and over? What other way can you write the same words in terms of the order of the words, so that we're not all starting with the same parts of speech. What original way can you start? Because it says for a 3 and a 4, your essay is unique, it's engaging, it's thoughtful, it's creative. So uh, they're saying choose your words carefully. So what other words can you use? Uh, words of wisdom. Is there a truism, a quote, or a saying that you can use? So some of the thesis statements that you're going to see in this video will have attention-getting word choices. Some will be preceded by little hooks based on the voice that's inside my head, my thoughts and my opinions about the topic, or the voice that's inside my heart, my feelings and my emotions. So for those of you who have the star writing guide, let me remind you by looking at, what is this, page 5, that even though this one's set up for persuasive, that if you're doing expository or persuasive, regardless of whatever the purpose is between those two and the prompt, the topic, part of your planning and your brainstorming doesn't have to be just the thesis statement or the position statement. You can have a hook, or what I call a whistle, using one of the wows that I discussed before your thesis. But just keep in mind, what example are you going to use so that your hook, your thesis, your position, your reasons, and your examples all relate to each other in some way. So this is page 7, where those blank prompts I gave you on my last video for the star writing guide now are going to have clear thesis or position statements. Write about the importance of honesty. So I would underline importance and honesty. When you make a promise to do something, okay, honesty has to do with not necessarily promises, but watch. You need to stay committed to follow it through, no matter how hard things might get later in life. So what are we saying? Don't make commitments if you're not going to be honest. I'm talking about honesty by the act of making a promise and sticking to it, telling the truth, because most promises are verbal or written, and anybody can do that, but it's going to take an honest person to stay committed and follow it through. And then in the body, your kid would just tell you why, give an example they could explain. Now, for kids who struggle coming up with thesis statements, I'm going to give 24 thesis statements just for honesty, because our practice prompt is going to be based on that one. Because I have a feeling that the one that I came up with for expository and the one that I came up with for persuasive, which we'll talk about later on in this video, could be asked by your students, because it hasn't been asked yet by either one. Read about how forgiveness cause can make you a better person. It is only when you're able to let go of the past, that's me talking about the forgiveness part, that you're able to allow your heart and mind to heal from pain. That's how it can make you a better person. So both parts are in there. Forgiveness, letting go of the past. Let's keep it simple. It's only when you're able to forgive that you can allow your heart to heal. You don't have to be complex or compound or fancy. You can think of a simple way to do this. Whenever you make a promise to do something, you need to be honest and stick to your verbal or written commitment no matter what. So the body could be spent talking about the importance of keeping verbal commitments and the importance of keeping written commitments, because that's a form of being honest with your words, or whether they're written or spoken. Right about whether persuasive, it's better to give or to receive. That's the one. No, that's not the one that I'm going to be doing for the sample. It is a great one that could be tested because it hasn't been given yet. Being willing to receive exact words when it comes to advice, GPS, getting more specific, is one of the best qualities. It's better, best quality a person can possess. So I would have to focus on receiving my position and being specific about advice. And again, it could be verbal or written advice. It could be in the form of counseling from a friend, from a family member, whichever one your students know the most about, they would zoom in on that. Right about whether persuasive position, family or friends are more important. Read about whether it's more important to be there for friends or family. You could write it that way because that's the way I have it in, oops, sorry about that, in the prompt page that we'll be using when we get to persuasive. What did I say as my answer? Let me see. Having someone you can call a friend is critical in order to be able to deal with the struggles of life. So I would focus on having a friend more than a family member. And I just have to tell you why that I feel like having a friend is more critical, more important. So I took my position, one side or the other. I used the word critical instead of the word important. 5, write about the importance of having people who care about you. What kind of people? It could be friends, family, like relatives, immediate, classmates, people that you work with, people that you cross paths with every day, even random strangers. I can care about you without having to actually know you. So my thesis statement is family is more than having a blood relative. It's being able to say you have someone who loves you no matter what. People who care about you, loves you no matter what. So I'm going to talk about people who care about me being like family. So I would have to be using examples from a book or a movie, a show, the news, something historical where family was there for people and loved them no matter what. You can think of all the way back through time where people showed that they loved someone and that they were there for them, even though they weren't necessarily blood relatives. Number 6, write an essay about the best way to become smarter. Best as in singular, one way only, one idea. Okay, there I am, small again in the video. Let me enlarge that just a little bit so that you can see me kind of sharing some ideas. And education is not always received in a classroom with books. Okay, so I'm basically eliminating the classroom way of getting smarter. Let me see which one I came up with as my thesis. The best education is acquired through life experiences. So the best way I can become smarter is through life experiences. And the examples I might give, your own successes or failures, or someone else's success and failures. Sometimes you become smarter by things you do wrong or watching other people do things wrong. 7, write about whether position persuasive or not college is important. So either college is or college is not important. Without a bachelor's or master's degree, how far you can excel in life is very limited. So me using the degrees that you get from college shows you that without using the word college, that I think that going to college is important. I don't have to restate or regurgitate. The reader is the eater of my words. And so if every single student says college is important and will determine how far you can excel in life, I'm going to get the reader's attention because I'm going to actually choose my words carefully and say, because I understand what college is, completion of college means I'm going to get a bachelor's degree after 4 years. Took me 6.5, and a master's degree in 2, 3, or 4 more years after that. So that's just a way to do the wow in terms of what vocabulary regarding college might I be uh, able to use to make sure I'm tying to the topic. 8, write about the importance of listening. So using your ears, not just hearing. Many people hear others speak, but don't really listen to what they're saying. That's an opinion. I'm allowed to say that. I didn't give you a number. I didn't make up some statistic. Only listening with your ears, heart, and mind leads to actual learning. So here's the compositional risk, because I've noticed that some of you are having your kids give like 2 ideas in as part of their thesis. So if I'm saying that I have to listen with my ears, my heart, and my mind as my thesis, that means in the body, I'm gonna have to show you how listening with your ears, how listening with your heart, and with your mind all are important and are going to create learning. But the harder part is going to be making them relate to each other. What's the connection? How does listening with your heart connect to listening with your ears? And the cool thing is, in between the letters H and T, you can see an ear. And so when you truly do use your ear with people that you care about, you listen with your whole heart. Okay? And my mind is part of my head, HEA. So most of the letters of head are there. And so I would kind of possibly use an acronym and say how it's so important that all that works together, that listening to people with your entire being, with all of your soul, your mind, your strength is going to create learning. Leads to actual learning. And it can be educational. It can be learning to be a better friend, because my word learning right now is kind of abstract, and I didn't say what we'll be learning. So I can pretty much go any direction I want as long as I'm talking about listening with these 3. Or you could say listening with your ears and your heart can lead to learning. If you just want to zoom in on 2, or you can just listen. Actually listening and not just hearing is what's going to lead to actual learning. That lets me just focus on 1. Number 9, write about the importance of trust. So they basically give you the cause, and they're asking your students to come up with the fact. You just can't say trust is important, because all you're doing is restating the topic. Your red light has to have a yellow light to go with it to be a clear thesis statement. being able to have someone you can confide in, using other words than the front words, in is a crucial attribute in any type of relationship. So you need people you can confide in, people you can trust for any type of relationship. So I would give you one or two different examples of the crucial attributes that are needed in order to be able to confide in someone, to tell people things that are confidential so that you can trust that they're not going to spread that information to anybody else. Number 10 out of 11, read about the importance of technology. Okay, and I think this is the only one that I remember seeing 1 year on a test. So if you know it's been tested, like let's say in 7th grade, then you know that can still be tested in 9th or 10th. If it was tested in 9th or 10th, then it could be tested in 7th. And I can't remember which grade level. Message me if you remember which grade level got a question like this. Life would virtually be unlivable in today's world without the use of modern inventions and technology. So life is unlivable, the importance. I'm basically saying we can't even survive without modern inventions and technology. So because I added inventions as part of technology, I might have to tie those two together and say, here are some inventions that are based on technology that we probably could not survive. And so I would have to have an example from my own life, a personal experience, things that we actually use in our homes or in school or in vehicles that we travel in every day, buses. Um, but because of the word technology, it would have to be an invention that's technology based, based on computerized science and uh, related things, because the techno world usually has to do with uh, something related to like computer science. It tends to be so, but your students can usually think outside the box, so they can probably think of something not necessarily computer related, because there's lots of technology that is not computer related, like remote control, um, cell phones, um, the camera that you're able to see me with, so there's lots of technology I feel like we could talk about. Read about whether persuasive position or not teachers should assign homework. Haven't seen that one yet. So homework is a vital tool. Um, I uh, the word important is not there, but vital is an opinion. You're saying that's an important tool, a vital tool that why? It allows students extra time to practice and fully understand new or difficult information. So as you know, especially in high school, because you only have your kids for 45 to 55 minutes, that's not going to leave them enough time to actually retain the information long enough to um, be able to apply it to real world situations or be able to remember it. So we need ET. Your kids are not all GT, gifted talkers or gifted and talented. Some of them are ET, not extraterrestrials, but they need extra time or extra times to practice things so that at home, outside of the classroom environment, they can get better. Because I just feel that one of the reasons that many secondary teachers struggle with teaching subjects and the scores is that less than an hour each day, there's just not enough quantity of time to give quality instruction by the time the kids settle down in class, um, get to focusing on what you're actually talking about, uh, reflecting and reminiscing about previous assignments. And sometimes you only get a good 30 minutes or less in on the lesson. So that's why I think maybe homework is important. Just be careful with essays, that it's all student driven, because a lot of kids will get help from their friends if they take an essay home. I remember one time that one of my kids, uh, it was like, um, it was almost like bipolar penmanship. I was like, how come you write so messy in class, but then when you take it home it's so neat? Well, it was his sister, his brother, his mom, or his dad that was finishing his work for them. Or some kids that would be smart, say, you know what, I need to write this in my own penmanship so my teacher won't know. Or they'll ask, oh, can I type this? And then you can't really tell. But if the student is using vocabulary on their paper that's higher than what they normally use when they write for you in class or talk to you in class, then you know that something is up there. And since this is the last year for writing with paper as an option, when people ask me, should they write in print or in cursive? My answer is yes. Write in print or in cursive. Whatever you write neater is what you should write with. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, in elementary, as a fourth grade teacher, 99% of my students wrote neater in print. So I just told them, I want you to write on test day in print, and it had to be the best penmanship. You should have, you would have been shocked by how neatly my students wrote. They just got so used to writing good to excellent penmanship because I wasn't accepting fair to poor penmanship. They had to write neatly and they would have to rewrite it because I just had a pretty high standard. But I did have one student who wrote neater in cursive than print, and I won't say his name because he's one of my Facebook friends nowadays. It was my last year of teaching, if I'm not mistaken. He would slow down in cursive where I could actually read his letters and the formations of the letters. They would all be the same direction and resting on the line and all those important things. His uh, G's, J's, P's, Q's, Y's, F's, and Z's that were lowercase were all halfway into the line like they should be when you're writing by hand. And when he would write in print, for some reason, he would just kind of rush. I was like, you know what? I almost said his name. You have permission. In fact, my prescription for you on test day is write in cursive what I call Aquaman, because cursive letters touch and I can swim faster if I write with my letters touching, if I'm that young man, than if I write in Iron Man where no letters are touching, where um, only the G, J, P, Q, and Y are halfway into the line in print, but we don't let letters touch because print letters that touch are called printsive. And you don't want your kids to get 2 zeros because their essays are indecipherable or illegible simply because we're allowing them to get away with writing messy. Oh, miss, I'm going to write my final draft neater. No, they should only practice what the final product is going to look like. So write neatly all the time, not just some of the times. Write neatly for all subjects. I think every classroom in America should get page 11, or it's 19, I can't remember now. I think it's 11 from my writing binder that has 7 basic penmanship rules that are simplistic and easy enough to follow, regardless of what class you're in, especially as we transition to uh, responses that we put on paper before we put them onto our computer as we transition to all online next year. I think that we should not just throw out paper and pencil. It just wouldn't make sense because I want my kids to still practice writing by hand. We're not always going to be typing everything for the rest of our lives. When I'm in church, I take notes by hand and I write normally in cursive because I can write it faster. If I want to write where it's neater, then I will write in print. So there's just certain things. If you're writing a note to a friend, you're not going to break out a computer. There's still going to be hundreds of situations where you would still write by hand. So let's not abandon pencil and paper, pen and paper, just because we're going to online. Allow your students to still perhaps write their rough draft or at least their outline on paper and pencil, and then that final draft can be on whatever computer documents are being provided. Your ninth and 10th grade, it's 1,750 characters, including the spaces. So a suggestion I have for you, if you have kids who don't have a lot to say with their pencils, with their computers, with their typing, then you can say 0 spaces between letters, 1 space between words, and 2 spaces between sentences. But in order to save some characters, some of you out there, and it can work as long as the kids are careful that um, it doesn't make it hard to read. It'll be 0 spaces between each letter when you're typing, and then between each word, 1 space, and after each punctuation, 1 space. That way, if you're going to run out, or if you realize that, say you're done and you were putting 2 spaces after each period or ending punctuation, and you needed just maybe 10 or 15 more characters, then just go back to all of your double spacing after the period and remove one of them. It's very easily done so that you can get those characters back that you lost because you were double spacing after a period. So just some suggestions there, but the main focus today was how to come up with clear thesis statements that would be high level. For each one of those that I wrote, you could transition or write a very simple version of them without having to get fancy like I did on mine. I just did that because my company has called me the 4s be with you when it comes to essays, not may the 1s or the 2s be with you. So we want to try and get as many 3s and 4s next April as possible. Thanks and God bless.